It is Sunday, the 22nd of October, in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. I had intended to wrap up my protest against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse, etc., but various things happened earlier that sort of delayed my leaving the area, and I've decided to continue to protest as people leave the church. People are starting to leave, and so I want to see people exiting. I want people exiting the church to see my picket signs and see my protest. So we will protest a little bit longer as people exit the church. But there's been a very interesting series of events happening, including a discussion with the woman who's coming towards the camera right now. So just decided to continue while people are coming out.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Well, thank you for engaging in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Someone should have done it years ago. And this is certainly open to dialogue. It's not me that's not open to dialogue. I've repeatedly told the church, including Reverend Diane Rollert, that if the church enters into dialogue towards trying to resolve the dispute, that I would suspend my protest for a minimum of 2 months, but they always rejected those offers. Stanislaus, I can't remember if I told him, but certainly John Ender and various other presidents and other people, I've told them this many, many times, and they've always refused. It's been very stubborn refusal to deal with the situation.
We've got new presidents now, but you understand...
Stanislaus?
You understand...
No, but who is the president right now?
I don't know, but I know.
You don't know?
I know.
Oh no, you're talking about the UUA? I'm talking about locally here. Yeah, it's not listed. The president's not listed, but locally, I believe it's a guy by the name of Stanislaus something. I like to call him Stalinslaus for various reasons. At the UUA, there is a new president. Her name is Susan Frederick Gray. I even offered to her to suspend my protest here for 2 months if she agreed to enter into dialogue with me, but she ignored that and essentially refused it. But anyway, here's the thing. We are so close to the 20th anniversary of my beginning my protest. It began in May of 1998, that I'm not all that inclined to suspending the protest. But I am...
Wait till May?
What I'm saying...
So you do it for 20 years?
Exactly, but what I'm saying is I'm still prepared to dialogue. If you want to talk, but what I'm saying is I'm not generously ending the protest now because I'm so close to, but I'm open to talk. I'm just not offering to spend
we'll let you work we'll let you have your 20 years if that would help you.
I think it'd be better if you resolve this dispute sooner rather than later. All I'm saying is the protest is not going to be suspended while we're in dialogue, but I'm open to dialogue. We're having dialogue right now.
Some of the words.
Well, you want to write me down which words you want me to change, and I'll give that some consideration. Okay. Or you can just tell me. But you should be democratic. Like get the church leadership to say which words and why, and I'll either agree or I'll say why I'm not doing it, so you understand why I'm not doing it.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm a very fair person. I try to be fair. I've made all kinds of fair offers that have been rejected.
I think you are, but I think you've been hurt in rejection.
Of course I've been hurt, Definitely been hurt. Not just me. At least I haven't been raped by Unitarian Universalist ministers, which some people have been.
Nor will you be.
One hopes. Figuratively speaking, I have. Figuratively speaking, Reverend Ray Drennan raped me. And to some extent, Reverend Diane Rollert too.
Please.
Sorry.
Please.
Sorry, yeah. No, sensitive ears.
You can't speak figuratively about rape,
well, you can, but I hear you. But here's the thing: is in falsely accusing me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel to suppress blog posts that tell the truth, the UUA, that the head office, did something terrible as far as I'm concerned. They're accusing me, and it violates the tradition of opposing blasphemy laws. There's a huge mistake.
Sometimes people talk too much.
A lot of Unitarian Universalist clergy talk too much. Including Reverend Ray Drennan. So that was a nice, pleasant conversation I had with a member of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. I'm glad I came back, and yes, that is recorded. This woman came out earlier as I was basically in the process of leaving, and she was looking at my picket signs and this and that. I was like packing up my picket signs to leave, because I was done as far as I was concerned, and then she basically struck up a little dialogue with me. Unfortunately, not all of it was recorded because my battery was at the end of its life and I hadn't replaced it, and so some things didn't get recorded, but I got a reasonable amount of our discussion. And so for various reasons, I was actually leaving, and I actually went away for a while. But then I decided, oh, it's about the time that people are exiting the church, so maybe I should go back and continue the protest for at least a little while as they're exiting. And it was very nice to see this woman come out again. I thought she was just leaving, but we had a nice little brief chat. Went very well, I think. And this is what's known as dialogue, which is what the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the larger Unitarian Universalist religious community should have engaged in, well, let's say 20 years ago, to say nothing of anywhere in between. Unfortunately, they're not very good at dialogue. They're not very good at any of their principles and purposes in my books, in my experience. In my experience, Montreal Unitarians and Unitarian Universalist Association leaders and numerous other Unitarian Universalists have made a total mockery of everything Unitarian Universalism claims to stand for in its 7 principles and various other ideals. I mean, one of the most glaring examples of outrageous hypocrisy on the part of the Unitarian Universalist Association and Unitarian Universalists more generally is that the Unitarian Universalist Association in Boston hired Stikeman Elliott barristers and solicitors litigation lawyer, Maitre Marc-Andre Coulombe, to falsely accuse me of committing the criminal act of blasphemous libel in clergy sex abuse cover-up and denial legally. Oh, look who's here! Okay, actually, I think that might be a case of mistaken identity. The guy looked quite a lot like the son of Valmir Bourdon, also known as Val Bourdon, but apparently it may not be. But a very, very similar look, and my eyesight's not perfect. So I said, oh, look who's here, because I thought it was the son of Valmir Bourdon, who is, well, certainly Valmir Bourdon. Val Bourdon was very involved in all of the injustices and abuses and hypocrisy that I'm protesting against, and his son was not so much directly involved, but he was certainly complicit. So when I saw what looked like to be the son of Valmir Bourdon, I couldn't help but make a little remark. So anyhow, I think today's protest is going swimmingly well. I mean, finally got someone coming out of the Unitarian Church of Montreal to engage in what's known as dialogue. I've been calling for dialogue for years, and they've always been refusing. I think what has happened is they've exhausted all of their possibilities in terms of suppressing my protest with the police. I think the police have finally figured out that, basically I'm well within my rights to do what I'm doing, and I have legitimate reasons to be protesting in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, and they're just not going to bother me. As far as I'm concerned, everything I'm doing is legal, well within my civil rights and freedoms as enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And, it's Montreal Unitarians who've actually repeatedly tried to suppress my civil rights and freedoms, repeatedly try to deny my ability to engage in peaceful public protest and so on. So anyhow, we'll just do a little protest as people are exiting the church, but things are looking promising in terms of some possible dialogue with some members, at least, of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. And the woman I spoke with, seems to recognize that I have some legitimate beefs, that I have some reason to be protesting. So we had some dialogue there. The remark earlier, it might be a case of mistaken identity. I thought you were someone else. So sorry about that. You look very similar to someone else I know. So yeah, I think it was a case of mistaken identity. So just apologizing, or at least explaining why I made the remark. So anyhow, so yeah, this guy I mistook for the son of Valmir Bourdon. and he clearly is not on closer inspection, as it were. Very similar though. So anyhow, yeah, we're just going to continue our little protest a little bit longer, and as people are exiting the church, and then we will upload the videos to YouTube so they can be seen, and then we'll decide what else we want to do with the rest of the day. But I'd say today's protest so far has been one of the most interesting and potentially successful in a long time. I mean, they're all reasonably interesting, but this one's especially interesting in light of the fact that I was able to have a little bit of dialogue and discussion with someone who's on the Unitarian Church of Montreal's Justice Committee. So that could turn into some promising developments towards the end of resolving this dispute. But as I told her, you know, I'm so close to celebrating the 20th anniversary of the beginning of my protest in May of 1998 that, you know, previous offers to suspend the protest for 2 months, you know, while, you know, if they agree to dialogue, and I've made plenty of those kinds of offers, including one quite recently to the new president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Well, I'm not all that inclined to suspend my protest, you know, so close to the 20th anniversary of beginning the protest. I'm still open to dialogue. I'm just not necessarily prepared to shut down the protest during that dialogue. So they'll just sort of have to live with it and respect my civil rights and freedoms to engage in peaceful public protest against Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse of all kinds, which from my perspective is not just clergy sexual abuse, but also non-forms of clergy abuse such as verbal and psychological abuse, emotional abuse, abuse of power, abuse of authority, and so on and so forth. And I will say that, you know, some of the less serious forms of clergy sexual misconduct are actually worse than some of the more serious forms of non-sexual clergy misconduct. You know, the sexual clergy misconduct gets all the attention and so on. But in fact, some of the non-sexual stuff is worse than the, good day sir, thanks for the nod, is worse than the sexual stuff. You know, for instance, you know, if a Unitarian Universalist minister made inappropriate sexual advances to a member of the congregation, well, that would be, you know, at the lower end of the clergy sexual misconduct scale. I would say that a minister making inappropriate and unwanted sexual advances to a member of their congregations, but not taking it any further than that, is actually a less serious offense than what I had to put up with here at the Unitarian Church of Montreal, which was Reverend Ray Drennan labeling me psychotic, labeling an interreligious event that I'd organized as a cult, insultingly describing my monotheistic religious beliefs as being nothing but silliness and fantasy, and so on and so forth. And that's just the beginning, because then he went on to basically misuse his authority within the church to get me kicked out, he and other leading members of the church. In fact, Frank Green, the president of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, even before Reverend Ray Drennan became the minister, when I was organizing an interreligious celebration of creation in 1994, snidely said, "Oh, I hope this has nothing to do with the Solar Temple," right around the time that the Solar Temple mass suicides had been reported. So a clear insinuation, you know, that the interreligious event that I was organizing, you know, had some kind of connection to a dangerous cult, you know, and then I later heard that, you know, he had been using the C word in conversation with other people. And in other words, you know, I did not hear the actual cult word directly from him, but, you know, making a snide insinuation about the Solar Temple is just as good. Let's Let's see what we got here. 7820 Motard. Oh, that's good. It's the anti-organized crime group. Yeah, maybe they should look into the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the Unitarian Universalist Association for some organized cover-up and denial of clergy sex abuse and so on. That could be organized crime. I'd say conspiring together to misuse Canada's blasphemy law and clergy sex abuse cover-up and denial legal bullying, which seeks to hide such despicable crimes as pedophilia and rape committed by certain Unitarian Universalist ministers, such as Reverend Mac Wallace Mitchell, etc. Could be described as organized crime, organized misuse of the criminal justice system, which is a crime. So yes, maybe the Motard section of the SPVM should look into the Unitarian Church of Montreal and the Unitarian Universalist Association for their misuse of the criminal justice system. So yes, just being a little ironic here, but yeah, it's actually a reasonably valid point. I'm being mildly sarcastic here, but there's really no question that Montreal Unitarians locally and the Unitarian Universalist Association internationally have on at least one occasion each attempted to misuse the criminal justice system to shut down my protest. And in the case of the Unitarian Church of Montreal, it's actually many misuses of the SPVM police force to try and shut down my protest in front of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. Many highly misleading or outright false complaints to the police, and so, or just spurious, you know. But yeah, there's no question that Montreal Unitarians have misrepresented the truth in their depositions to the police and in their phone calls to the police and so on. You know, this is a misuse of the criminal justice system to try and deprive me of my constitutionally guaranteed civil right and freedom to engage in peaceful public protest against whatever, but in my case, more specifically, to protest against